I want to tell you something before I get into this. I am not someone who panics. Ask anyone who knows me. In a bad situation, I go quiet. I think. I assess that's just who I am. But there was a moment on a beach in Cape Cod where I was lying flat on the ground underneath a stranger's jeep, barely breathing, watching a pair of bloody bare feet stop less than 2 feet from my face, and I have never been more terrified in my life. Let me take you back to the beginning. This happened a few summers ago. One of my closest friends was getting married, and his best man had organized a bachelor party in Cape Cod. 3 nights, all expenses covered. Honestly, not something I was going to turn down. The first couple of days were exactly what you'd expect. Beach during the day, bars at night. Good weather, good people, good time. The first night out, I met a girl. Her name was Brittany. She was a local, grew up near the Cape. We had good conversation, exchanged numbers, and spent most of the next day texting. When my friends decided to try a different bar on the second night, I stayed at the same one we'd been to the previous night to meet up with her. We talked for a couple of hours. She was easy to be around. At some point, she suggested we go for a walk on the beach. It sounded perfect. I had no idea what we were walking into. The beach access from the bar was easy. We kicked off our shoes and just started walking. It was dark, but not pitch black, enough moonlight that we could see where we were going. For the first part of the walk, we were passing the backs of houses. Private property, technically, but Brittany said it was fine. She knew this stretch well. We kept walking. Eventually, the houses disappeared. The terrain changed from sand to rocks, bigger, uneven slabs of rock that jutted out toward the water. It was harder to walk, but we managed. We were talking, laughing. I wasn't thinking about anything except the moment, and then Brittany went quiet. I noticed her expression change. She was looking out ahead of us at something, not at me, not at the water, at something in the distance. She asked me if I could see that. I looked. She pointed toward a cluster of rocks about 20 feet ahead of us. In the dark, it just looked like another rock formation. I told her that. I said it was just rocks. She didn't agree. She said there was a person standing in there. I squinted. I tried to focus. I genuinely could not make out what she was talking about. Everything out there looked like rock to me. She started walking forward to get a better look. I followed, still trying to convince her it was nothing. We were maybe 10 feet away when I saw it. It moved, not a lot, not dramatically, just a small shift, a repositioning. The way a person moves when they've been still for a long time and they adjust their weight. I stopped walking. I stopped talking. I grabbed Brittany's arm. She was right. There was a man crouched on the rocks ahead of us. He wasn't standing fully upright. He was partially kneeling, like he had been sitting there in the dark for a long time. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out more details. He was wearing a maroon-colored hat, worn like it had been through a lot of weather. I don't know how long he had been there. I don't know how long we had been walking toward him without realizing it. What I did know was that something about this felt immediately, completely wrong. I leaned over to Brittany and told her quietly that we should turn around. She agreed without a word. We turned and started heading back the way we came, casually at first. I didn't want to run immediately. I didn't want to provoke anything if the man was just someone sitting on the rocks minding his own business. We walked for a few minutes in silence. I looked back. He was behind us, same maroon hat, same posture, moving in our direction. I told myself it was coincidence, same direction, that's all. Happens all the time. I looked back again a minute later. He was closer, and he wasn't walking casually. There was purpose in how he was moving. He was covering ground deliberately, not the way someone strolls on a beach at night, the way someone moves when they have a destination in mind. That destination was us. Brittany turned to me with wide eyes. She told me he was following us. I didn't argue this time. I told her to run. We ran, not a jog, a full sprint on dark, uneven sand. I could hear our footsteps, our breathing, and somewhere behind us, his footsteps too. I looked back and he was running, full speed, not shouting, not calling out to us. Just running after us in complete silence, which somehow made it worse. There is something deeply primal about being chased in the dark. Your brain stops analyzing and just reacts. Every instinct you have fires at once, and your body makes decisions before your mind catches up. We reached the stretch where the houses began. I saw a house with a driveway, a Jeep parked outside, a fence separating the yard from the beach. I told Brittany to trust me. I grabbed her hand and we went over the fence. We got down on the ground and pulled ourselves underneath the Jeep. It was a tight fit, cold concrete against my chest, the smell of oil and damp pavement. Brittany pressed next to me, her hand over her own mouth to muffle her breathing. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. We waited. For a moment, there was nothing, just the sound of the ocean and the distant noise of the bar we had walked away from, and then I heard him. Footsteps on the driveway, slow, not rushed, deliberate. He had followed us off the beach. I turned my head slightly and looked toward the bottom of the driveway. I could see his feet, bare. The skin was dark with dirt and what I can only describe as dried blood on the soles. They stopped less than 2 feet from my face. He just stood there, not moving, not speaking. I stopped breathing. Brittany had gone completely rigid beside me. Neither of us made a sound. Then I heard it, a clicking sound, coming from his mouth, a steady, rhythmic clicking of his tongue, like some kind of signal or habit. It went on for what felt like forever. That's when I saw what he was holding. In his right hand, hanging at his side, catching just enough light from the nearby street lamp, was a blade, long, wide. The kind of thing you don't carry on a beach walk unless you have a reason to carry it. I am not going to use my imagination about what that reason might have been. He stood there for a long time, long enough that my arms were shaking from holding myself still on the cold concrete. Long enough that I started to wonder if somehow he could hear us or sense us, and then slowly he started walking down the driveway past the Jeep. Out onto the street, I watched his bare, bloody feet move away from us. The clicking sound faded. I kept watching until I couldn't see him anymore. I waited another full minute before I moved. We got out from under the Jeep. We went back over the fence to the beach, and we ran. Not because we saw him again, but because we could not stop running until we were somewhere with lights and people and noise. When we got back to the bar, we were still shaking. We called an Uber and went back to the Airbnb where my friends were staying. I told them what happened. They listened in silence. Nobody made a joke. We spent the rest of that night with the doors locked. I never saw the man in the maroon hat again. Not that night, not the rest of the trip. Brittany told me later that she had grown up around that beach her whole life. She had walked that stretch of rocks probably 100 times. She had never seen him before, and she has never gone back to that part of the beach since. I've tried to make sense of that night many times since it happened. Maybe he was just a local with no harmful intentions. Maybe he was mentally unwell and we happened to be in his space. Maybe the machete, and I am fairly certain that is what it was something he carried for protection. Maybe. But here's what I keep coming back to. He wasn't walking along the beach. He was crouched on those rocks, completely still in the dark at that hour of night. He wasn't out for a stroll, he was waiting. And if Brittany hadn't looked up at exactly the right moment, I don't finish that thought.